Richard's hands shook as he signed what he thought were wedding papers, but the documents were in Tagalog, and Maria's family's eager smiles felt wrong. 6 months later, this 62-year-old American discovered the devastating truth about the woman he trusted with everything. The airport security guard stared at Richard's passport longer than necessary. Purpose of visit? The question hung in the humid Manila air. Richard's mouth went dry. Behind him, a family argued in Tagalog, their voices sharp like breaking glass. Tourism, he managed, though the real answer burned in his chest. Escape. The guard's eyes narrowed. Stamped. Enjoy your stay. Richard's phone buzzed. Maria's message glowed on the screen. Can't wait to hold you, my love. A photo appeared, her in a white dress, smiling like sunshine. He'd sold his Chicago house for this moment. 3 months ago, his wife of 28 years had served him divorce papers. Now, at 62, he was starting over with a woman who made him feel alive through a screen. The taxi driver whistled when Richard showed him the hotel address. Makati? Expensive area, sir. Richard nodded, not mentioning the boutique hotel cost more per night than most Filipinos earned in a month. Maria had suggested it. You deserve luxury after your flight, she typed. The city rushed past. Street children tapping on windows, skyscrapers next to shanties, chaos that somehow worked. His room overlooked the city's skyline. Richard counted his cash again. $40,000 in hundreds, split between his wallet and 3 hidden pockets. The rest waited in his American bank account. His daughter Carol's last words echoed, "Dad, please think about this." But thinking was what had kept him alone in that empty house, staring at photo albums of a marriage that had died years before the papers made it official. Maria called. Her voice was honey. "Richard, you're really here." He could hear music in the background. Laughter. "Where are you?" he asked. A pause. "With family. They're so excited to meet you tomorrow." The line went dead. Richard stared at the phone. She'd never mentioned family before. That night he couldn't sleep. The air conditioner hummed like the doubts in his head. He opened his laptop, scrolled through their 8 months of messages. Her English was perfect, unusual, his friend Tom had said. Most Filipinas struggle with grammar, but Richard had dismissed it. Maria was different, special. Morning came too fast. Richard chose his best shirt, the blue one that made his eyes look younger. The mirror showed the truth. Gray hair, lines around his eyes, the soft middle that no amount of gym time could fix. What did she see in him? The question he never asked online suddenly felt important. The coffee shop in Greenbelt Mall was crowded. Richard checked his watch. She was late. 30 minutes. An hour. His coffee grew cold. A young couple at the next table whispered and giggled. The girl looked up, caught his stare, whispered something to her boyfriend. They both laughed. Then he saw her. Maria walked in like she owned the place. Designer bag, perfect makeup, heels that clicked on the marble floor. She was smaller than her photos suggested, but more beautiful. When she spotted him, her face lit up. "Richard!" She ran to him, threw her arms around his neck. She smelled like flowers and something else. "Ambition? I'm sorry, traffic was terrible," she said. But her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup fresh. Richard pushed down the doubt. She was here. That's what mattered. "You look tired," she said, touching his face. Her fingers were soft. "The flight. Couldn't sleep. Excited, I guess." She smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. "You trust me, right?" The question surprised him. "Of course." "Good. Because my family, they're protective. They might ask questions." "What kind of questions?" She waved her hand. "Nothing serious. Just be patient with them. They're not used to foreigners." They spent the day together. She took him to Intramuros, held his hand while they walked the old walls. Tourists stared, an old white man with a young Filipina. Richard felt their judgment, but Maria squeezed his hand tighter. "Let them look," she said. "They don't know our love." Love. She'd used the word so easily. At dinner, she chose a restaurant where the menu had no prices. Richard noticed she ordered without looking. like she'd been there many times. When the bill came, she reached for it, but slowly. He paid $300 for 2 people. "Tomorrow you meet my family," she said over dessert. "They live in the province. It's simple there." "I don't mind simple." Her smile was sad. "You say that now." Back at his hotel, she lingered at the door. "Aren't you coming in?" he asked. "Not yet. We should do things properly. My family is traditional." Traditional. But her dress was Versace, her perfume French. Richard kissed her goodnight, tasted lipstick and lies. Or was that his fear talking? Alone in his room, he Googled Filipina scams foreigners. The results made his stomach turn. Story after story of men like him, older, divorced, lonely. Men who lost everything. He closed the laptop. Maria wasn't like that. She couldn't be. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Richard? This is Maria's brother. We need to talk about tomorrow." "How did you get my number?" A pause. Maria gave it. "Listen, you seem like nice guy, but our family, we have situation." "What situation?" "Better we talk in person. Just bring cash. For emergency." The line went dead. Richard stared at the ceiling until dawn, wondering if he'd flown 8,000 miles into a trap. But when morning came, he dressed carefully, counted his money again, and waited for Maria. Because what else could he do? He'd already sold everything for this chance at love. When she arrived, she was perfect again. Smiled like nothing was wrong. Kissed him like she meant it. "Ready to meet my family?" she asked. Richard nodded, though his gut screamed warnings. The taxi pulled away from the hotel, heading into parts of Manila no tourist ever sees. And Richard, 62 and desperate not to be alone, let himself be carried deeper into whatever waited for him in the provinces of the Philippines. The van bumped over roads that went from bad to worse. Maria sat close, her hand on Richard's knee, but her eyes stayed on her phone. She typed quickly, switched between apps, smiled at messages he couldn't read. "My sister," she explained when she caught him looking. "She's preparing lunch." They'd been driving for 3 hours. Manila's skyscrapers had given way to rice fields, then mountains, then villages where children ran barefoot and dogs looked hungry. Richard's back ached. The driver, introduced only as Cousin Boy, hadn't spoken since they'd left the city. "How much further?" Richard asked. "Soon," Maria said. It was her answer to everything today. The village appeared suddenly. Wooden houses on stilts, a basketball court with no net, a small church with a rusted roof. People stopped to stare as the van passed. White man, young Filipina. The story wrote itself on their faces. Maria's family compound was the largest in the village. Concrete walls topped with broken glass. A metal gate that squealed when Cousin Boy pushed it open. Richard counted 12 people waiting in the yard, all staring. "This is him," Maria announced, pulling Richard forward. "Richard, my American. My American." Like he was a prize or a pet. The introductions blurred together. Mama Rose, who grabbed his face and declared him too pale. Papa June, who shook his hand too hard and asked immediately about his job. Brothers, sisters, cousins, children who called him Uncle Dollar. A joke? Maria insisted, but nobody laughed. They sat him at the head of a long table. Food appeared, adobo, sinigang, things he couldn't name. Everyone watched him eat. When he used a spoon and fork instead of his hands, the children giggled. "You have house in America?" Papa Yun asked. "Had. I sold it." Silence. Looks exchanged. "Why?" Mama Rose's voice was sharp. "To start fresh," Richard said. Maria squeezed his hand under the table. "Fresh starts are expensive," said a brother. "Which one?" Richard had lost track. "He's retired," Maria said quickly. "Good pension. Savings." More looks. Richard felt like meat being weighed at market. After lunch, they showed him around. The house was bigger than it looked. Rooms added without plan or permission. In one, Richard spotted 3 computers, all new, all running. "My brother's business," Maria explained, but didn't elaborate. They took him to see the family business, a small store selling basics. The shelves were half empty. Hard times, Mama Rose sighed. If only we had investor. Richard understood now. The setup, the drive. The family gathered like vultures. He was the investor they'd been waiting for. But then Maria took his hand, led him to a quiet corner of the yard. I know what you're thinking, she said. They're not subtle. But Richard, I'm not like them. What we have is real. Is it? She kissed him then, long and deep. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. I love you. Despite everything. I love you. Despite what? Richard wanted to ask, but her brothers were calling them back. The business proposal came after dinner. Papa June spread papers on the table. Plans for expanding the store, buying a jeepney, starting a small restaurant. With your help, he said. We make you rich, man. I thought I was already rich, Richard said. Nobody laughed. Maria translated the numbers, though Richard suspected she changed them as she went. 50,000 to start. Guaranteed returns of 30%. All unofficial, of course. Banks here don't understand family business, Papa June explained. I need to think about it, Richard said. The room went cold. Maria's hand left his. Of course, Papa June said, but his smile was gone. You think. We wait. They put him in a guest room that smelled like mothballs and old prayers. Maria kissed him good night at the door, whispered trust me in his ear. But when Richard lay down, he heard voices through the thin walls, arguing in Tagalog. He caught his name, numbers, what sounded like deadlines. He didn't sleep. At midnight, his phone buzzed. Carol, his daughter. Dad, please call me. I'm worried. He typed back, I'm fine. Everything is fine. The lie felt heavy in the dark. Morning brought new pressure. Mama Rose cooked special breakfast, Richard's favorite. Though he'd never mentioned liking dried fish and garlic rice. The family gathered again, all smiles, all watching. Papa June has good news, Maria announced. The investment minimum is now only 30,000. Generous, Richard said. The word tasted bitter. After breakfast, Maria suggested a walk. Just the two of them, she insisted, though Richard noticed one of her brothers following at a distance. They walked through the village, past houses that looked ready to collapse, children who begged with their eyes. Maria pointed out where the new restaurant would go, where the expanded store would serve the community. We could help so many people, she said. You and me, partners in business and life. Maria, I need to ask you something. She stopped walking. What? If I said no to the investment, would you still love me? Her face went through changes. Surprise, hurt, anger, then back to sweetness so fast Richard wondered if he'd imagined the rest. Of course, she said. But why would you say no? Don't you trust my family? Trust. That word again. They returned to find the family in crisis. Urgent whispers, Mama Rose crying, Papa June on the phone speaking rapid Tagalog. Maria ran to them, fell into the conversation. Richard stood apart, watching, understanding nothing except that somehow this too was performance. What's wrong? He finally asked. Maria turned, tears streaming. My uncle.
Motorcycle accident.
He needs surgery, but the hospital wants payment first. Of course he did. Of course they wanted payment. How much? Richard heard himself ask.
20,000 pesos.
Maybe more. About $400. Nothing to him, everything to them. Or so the story went. Richard reached for his wallet. The family watched. Maria's tears stopped as suddenly as they'd started. But something in their eyes made him pause. Not gratitude, not relief, anticipation, like gamblers watching dice roll. I'll need to see the hospital bill, he said. The room went silent again. You don't trust us, Papa June said. Not a question. I trust Maria, Richard lied. But I'm careful with money. That's how I saved enough to retire. Maria stepped between them. Of course he's careful. That's smart. I'll get the bill. She left quickly. Too quickly. The family dispersed, leaving Richard alone with Papa June. You know, the older man said, lighting a cigarette. Maria has many suitors, younger men, Filipino men, but she chose you. Lucky me. Papa June blew smoke toward the ceiling. Yes,
Lucky.
or maybe smart. Young women here, they know what they want. And they know how to get it. What are you saying? Nothing. Just observation. He stood, flicked the cigarette into the yard. Maria will return soon. With Bill. Real or not real, who can say? But you'll pay anyway. Because you're already in too deep. Richard's chest tightened. I can leave any time.
Papa June left.
Can you? Van is my cousin's. Road back to Manila is long. And Maria. She knows things now. About your money. Your bank. Your plans. Are you threatening me? Advising. Father to. Almost son-in-law. Maria returned with a crumpled paper. Hospital letterhead. Amount circled in red. Richard couldn't read the Tagalog, but the numbers were clear. 22,000 pesos. He paid. What else could he do? That night they celebrated. The uncle would be fine, they said. Toast after toast to Richard's generosity. Maria sat on his lap, kissed his cheek, called him hero in front of everyone. But when the family drifted off to sleep, when Maria walked him to his room, she stopped at the door again. No, he said before she could speak. Stay with me. I can't. Not here. Not yet. When? She touched his face. Soon. When you're really part of the family. Part of the family. Richard understood now. The price of admission wasn't just the uncle's surgery or the business investment. It was everything. All of it. Until he had nothing left to give. He packed his bag at 3 a.m. Counted his remaining cash. Checked his phone for the nearest hotel in the next town. He'd walk if he had to. But when he opened the door, Maria's brother stood in the hallway. Going somewhere, uncle? Richard's mouth went dry. Just couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get some air. Dangerous at night. Better you rest. Big day tomorrow. What's tomorrow? The brother smiled. Maria didn't tell you? Tomorrow you meet the mayor. About the wedding.
Wedding.
The word hit Richard like cold water. He went back inside, shut the door, sat on the bed with his packed bag. His phone had no signal. The window faced the concrete wall. And somewhere in the house, he could hear Maria laughing with her sisters, planning a wedding he'd never proposed. The trap wasn't just closing. It was already shut. The mayor's office smelled like cigarettes and old paper. Richard sat between Maria and Papa June, watching the mayor's gold tooth flash as he talked. American citizen marrying Filipina, the mayor said, stamping papers without reading them. Very good for our community. Richard's hands shook. Wait, I haven't proposed to anyone. The room went quiet. Maria's nails dug into his arm. Misunderstanding, Papa June said quickly. Richard means he hasn't proposed formally. American style. The mayor laughed. Americans and their romance. Here, when families agree, marriage happens. He slid more papers across the desk. Sign here, Mr. Richard. Just preliminary documents. What do they say? Richard asked. Standard forms, Maria whispered. For foreign residents. Please just sign. Don't embarrass me. Embarrass her. Richard looked at the papers. All in Tagalog except for lines marked with red X's. His hand moved toward the pen, then stopped. I need these translated first, he said. The mayor's smile faded. Papa June shifted in his chair. Maria's eyes filled with tears. You don't trust us, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. After everything my family has done for you. Done for him? Richard wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, he stood up. I need some air. Outside, the sun hit him like a hammer. The town square was busy. Vendors selling fruit, tricycles weaving through traffic, people staring at the American who just insulted their mayor. His phone finally had signal. 12 missed calls from Carol. He dialed quickly. Dad. Thank God. Where are you? Some town in the Philippines. Carol, I think I'm in trouble. Get out. Now, whatever it takes. It's not that simple. They have my passport. Richard stopped. When had he given them his passport? He checked his pocket. Empty. The hotel safe where he'd left it was 3 hours away. Dad? Dad, are you there? The line went dead. No signal again. When Richard turned around, 3 of Maria's brothers stood behind him. Time to go back inside, Uncle, one said. Not a suggestion. The mayor was gone when they returned. Maria sat alone, papers still on the desk. Where's my passport? Richard demanded. Safe, she said, with our other important documents. I want it back. Now. She stood, moved close. Why are you being like this? I thought you loved me. This isn't love, Maria. This is business. Her slap came fast, hard. How dare you? I gave up everything for you. Gave up what? Richard wondered. But her brothers were watching, waiting for his next move. I'm sorry, he said, the words ash in his mouth. I'm just overwhelmed. Maria's anger melted into concern. Oh, baby, of course you are. It's culture shock. She hugged him, whispered in his ear. Play along, please, for us. For us. But which us did she mean? They drove him to the bank next. Joint account, Papa June explained. For the wedding expenses. Very normal here. Normal. Like everything else that felt wrong. Richard watched the bank manager, another cousin. Prepare forms. Account in Maria's name, Richard as cosigner. Access to his U.S. accounts for easy transfers. How much for initial deposit? The manager asked. 5 million pesos, Papa June said casually. 100,000 US dollars. For proper wedding. Big celebration. Show whole province Richard's commitment. Richard laughed. He couldn't help it. The sound echoed off the bank's walls. Something funny?
Papa June asked.
Everything, Richard said. This whole show. You think I'm stupid? The room tensed. Maria grabbed his hand. Richard, please. He pulled away.
No.
I want my passport. I want to leave. Now.
Papa June's face darkened.
Leave? After dishonoring my daughter? After living in our house? Eating our food? I paid for that food. And the uncle's surgery. And God knows what else. You think you can just use Filipino women then throw them away?
Papa June stood, fists clenched.
This isn't America. We have laws protecting our women from predators. Predators. The word hung in the air like a threat. I haven't touched her, Richard said.
No. Papa June smiled coldly.
Maria, tell them what happened in Manila, in his hotel. Maria looked down. He forced me to come to his room. Tried things. I said no, but... That's a lie, Richard shouted. She never even came inside. Who will they believe?
Papa June asked.
Young Filipina or old American sex tourist? Sex tourist. The words made Richard's blood freeze. He understood now. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. Complete control. What do you want? He asked quietly. Simple. Marriage. Investment. Be good husband to Maria. Or...
Papa June shrugged.
Police might hear different story. Immigration might revoke visa. American might find Philippine jail very educational. Richard's legs felt weak. He sat down, put his head in his hands. Think. There had to be a way out. I need to call my embassy, he said. Of course. Papa June gestured to the door. Phone is outside. But embassies move slowly. Cases take months. Years sometimes. Where will Americans stay during investigation? Maria knelt beside Richard's chair. It doesn't have to be like this, she said softly. Just marry me. Be happy. I'll be good wife. Give you children. Make you young again. Children. At 62. With a woman who switched between love and lies like changing clothes. I need time to think, Richard said. Of course. Papa June checked his watch. You have until tomorrow. Then we visit police. Or church. Your choice. They drove back to the compound in silence. Richard stared out the window, counting his options. Few. Getting fewer. At the house, they gave him his room again. Put guards, cousins, outside. Brought food he didn't eat, water he didn't trust. Maria came at sunset. Alone, she said, though Richard heard breathing outside the door. I'm sorry, she said. About today. Papa gets protective. Protective? He threatened to have me arrested on false charges. She sat on the bed, close but not touching. Not false, just exaggerated. And only if necessary. And the marriage? That part is real. She took his hand. I do want to marry you, Richard. Maybe not for pure reasons at first. But now, I care about you. You care about my money. Yes, that too. I won't lie. My family is poor. This is how we survive. But is it so different from America? Don't women marry for security there too? Richard had no answer. His own ex-wife had stayed for the house, the cars, the comfortable life, until she found someone who offered more. Let me go, he said. I'll send money. Monthly. Support you from America. Maria shook her head. Papa won't allow it. Too risky. You might stop sending. Might forget us. I give my word. She laughed sadly. Words are cheap. Even American words. They sat in silence as darkness filled the room. Finally, Maria stood. Tomorrow you decide. Marriage or scandal. Freedom or jail. Love or loneliness. She paused at the door. I know which I prefer. When she left, Richard lay in the dark, fully dressed, waiting, planning. He had one chance, maybe. The guards would change shifts at midnight. The wall behind the house was lower. He still had cash hidden in his shoe. 11:30. Richard stood, stretched, made normal sounds, used the bathroom, ran water, flushed, came back to bed. Midnight. Voices outside. Guards changing. Now, Richard moved to the window, opened it slowly. The wall was 10 feet away, 6 feet high. He could make it. Had to make it. He climbed out, dropped to the ground, moved toward the wall. Almost there. Lights blazed. Dogs barked. Men shouted. They caught him at the wall, dragged him back. Papa June waited in the yard, shaking his head like a disappointed father. Foolish man, he said. Now we do this hard way. They tied Richard to a chair. Not tight enough to hurt, just enough to humiliate. Maria appeared, still in nightclothes, crying. Why did you try to leave? She asked. Don't you understand? You belong to us now. Belong. Like property. Like a slave. Papa June made a phone call. Spoke rapidly. Hung up smiling. Police chief is my cousin, he said. He comes tomorrow. We'll take statement about assault. About American who likes young girls too much. Very serious crime here. Richard's mouth went dry. You're framing me. Framing? No. Creating options. Marriage looks better now, yes? They left him tied until dawn. When they finally released him, Richard could barely stand. His wrists were raw, his dignity shredded. But his mind was clear. Crystal clear. They wanted him to break. To surrender. To accept their version of reality. Instead, Richard began to plan. Not escape, that was impossible now. Something else. Something they wouldn't expect. If they wanted to play dirty, he'd learn their game. Then beat them at it. The morning sun brought new possibilities. And Richard, bruised but not broken, prepared for war. The police chief arrived at breakfast. Fat belly, thin mustache, eyes that counted money while his mouth made small talk. He shook Papa June's hand like family, which he was, and looked at Richard like prey. Mr. Richard, he said, sitting heavily. I hear you have problem with our women. No problem, Richard said carefully. Just misunderstandings.
Ah, misunderstanding.
The chief accepted coffee from Mama Rose, added 5 sugars. In Philippines, misunderstandings with young ladies can be very serious. Very expensive to fix. Expensive. There it was. The real language everyone spoke here. Maria entered wearing a white dress, looking younger, innocent. She'd been crying, or pretending to cry. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged just right. Tell him, Papa June ordered. Maria's voice shook. In the hotel. He tried to. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. That's enough, the chief said gently. He turned to Richard. You see? Poor girl. Traumatized. My job is to protect Filipino citizens from foreign predators. Richard felt the walls closing in. But something had changed in him during the night tied to that chair. Fear had burned away, leaving something harder. How much? He asked. The room went quiet. Excuse me? The chief said. To make this go away. How much?
Papa Yun smiled.
The chief frowned, playing offended. Mr. Richard, you cannot bribe police in Philippines. I'm not bribing. I'm asking about administrative fees, misunderstanding fees, whatever you call it. The adults exchanged looks. Maria pecked through her fingers. Marriage would solve everything, Papa June suggested. Happy ending for all. Or, Richard said, I could pay reasonable compensation for the misunderstanding. Then leave quietly. How much is reasonable? The chief asked. Richard had done the math. Had about $30,000 left between his cash and what he could access quickly. They'd want most of it. 20,000 US, he said. For everyone's trouble.
Papa Yun left.
20,000? For destroying young woman's reputation? For breaking sacred trust? 50,000. Minimum. I don't have 50,000. Then find it. Or marry Maria. Or. The chief shrugged. Philippine prison is very educational place. They left him alone to think. But Richard wasn't thinking about their offer. He was thinking about what he'd seen that morning. Papa June's laptop, left open on the kitchen table. Bank statements visible. Transfers to accounts in Hong Kong, Singapore. Amounts that made Richard's money look like pocket change. This wasn't a poor family desperate for help. This was a business. A well-oiled machine for harvesting lonely foreigners. Richard asked to use the bathroom. They let him. He'd proven he couldn't run. But Richard wasn't running. He was hunting. In the hallway, he heard voices from another room. American accent. Older man crying. Richard pressed his ear to the door. Please, I did everything you asked. Married her. Gave the money. Just let me go home. Another voice, one of Maria's brothers. Sorry, Uncle Tom. Divorce not legal here. You stay married. Keep sending money. Or wife tells police about drugs you bought. I never bought drugs. Who will they believe? Richard moved away quickly. So he wasn't the first. Not even the only one here now. How many others? Back in his room, he pulled out his phone. Still no signal, they must have a jammer. But the camera worked. He started taking pictures. Of everything. Every document he could find. Every face. Every corner of the compound. Maria came to him at lunch. Different dress. Blue this time, more mature. Playing a new character. Richard, please, she said. This is getting ugly. Just marry me. I'll make you happy. Like you made Tom happy? She froze. What? Other American. Room down the hall. How many of us are there, Maria? How many husbands do you collect? Her mask slipped. Just for a second. Then the tears came again. How can you say that? I love only you. Stop. Richard's voice was steel. Just stop. I know what this is now. Business. Fine. Let's talk business. Maria wiped her tears. Real or fake? Who could tell? What do you mean? I mean, let's skip the marriage drama. I'll invest in your family business. The real business. The one that farms Americans. She stood quickly. I don't know what. Yes, you do. And I have a proposition. Better than marriage. Better than threats. Want to hear it? She stared at him, calculating. Then nodded slowly. I have connections in America. Richard lied smoothly. Lonely men. Rich men. Stupid men like I was. I could send them here. For a fee. You're crazy. Am I? Think about it. Regular supply of targets. No more hunting online. I handle screening, travel arrangements. You handle the rest. Split profits. Maria sat back down. Papa would never agree. Papa's not stupid. He knows one-time payments aren't sustainable. But steady stream of income? Partnership with someone who understands both sides. She was listening now. Really listening. I'd need guarantees, she said finally. Trust. Richard almost laughed. Trust. From her. Marry me, he said. Like you planned. But different terms. Business partners.
No touching. No romantic garbage.
Just profit sharing. And the 50,000? Investment capital. Into the real family business. With proper contracts. My lawyer, not yours. Maria stood, paced the room. Richard watched her think, weigh options. She was smarter than she pretended. More dangerous, too. I need to talk to Papa, she said. Of course. But Maria? Tell him about Tom. Tell him I know there are others. Tell him I'm not threatening to expose anything. I'm offering to help expand. Professionally. She left quickly. Richard sat back, heart hammering. It was a desperate play. Pretend to join them to buy time, to gather evidence, to find a way out. Or maybe it wasn't pretend. Maybe this was who he really was now. Who they'd made him. Another predator in paradise. An hour later, Papa June entered alone. Sat across from Richard. Studied him like a chess opponent. Interesting proposal, he said finally. It makes sense. You know it does. Perhaps. But trust is earned. Not bought. Then let me earn it. Give me a test. Something to prove I'm serious.
Papa June smiled.
Actually, we have problem. Another American. Older than you. Been here 6 months. Married my niece. Now causing trouble. Wants annulment. Threatening to contact embassy. And convince him to stay quiet. To accept situation. Show us you understand our business. Richard nodded slowly. Where is he? Next house. Under supervision. Like you. They took Richard to meet the man that evening. Gary, from Texas. 70 years old. Thin as paper. Eyes hollow with defeat. His wife girl really sat in the corner playing with her phone. They sent another one? Gary laughed bitterly. Join the club, friend. Hotel California. Can check out but never leave. Richard sat beside him. How much did they get? Everything. House in Dallas. Retirement accounts. Sold it all for love. Gary spat the word. Now they want monthly payments. Forever. Or they'll plant drugs. Call police. What if you just paid? Peacefully? Gary stared at him. You working for them now? I'm trying to survive. Like you. Sometimes that means accepting reality. Reality? Reality is I'm a prisoner. Reality is you're alive. Richard cut in. Free to walk around. Still have some money coming in. Could be worse. Much worse. Gary studied Richard's face. They got to you. Broke you already. Maybe. Or maybe Richard was playing a longer game. He couldn't tell anymore. They talked for hours. Richard spun stories about acceptance, about finding peace in surrender. Garbage, all of it. But Gary was tired. So tired. Eventually, he nodded. Maybe you're right. Maybe fighting just makes it worse. Richard reported back to Papa June, watched the older man's approval grow. Good work. Gary will behave now. No embassy calls. No trouble. So, do we have a deal? Papa June extended his hand. Welcome to the family business. For real this time. They shook. Richard felt dirty. Complicit. But also, for the first time in days, safer. That night, they celebrated. Whole family gathered. Food, wine, karaoke. Maria sat beside Richard, playing the loyal wife-to-be. He played along, mind-racing. During a quiet moment, she leaned close. You surprised me today. Didn't think you had it in you. Had what? Survivor instinct. Most Americans just break or run. You adapted. Is that what I did? She kissed his cheek. Tomorrow we sign papers. Real contracts. Then marriage next week. Business marriage, like you said. Richard nodded. Smiled. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe he'd joined their twisted family. But his phone was full of pictures. His memory full of names, dates, crimes. And somewhere in America, his daughter was waiting for him to call, to say the code word they'd agreed on if he was in real trouble. Tomorrow, during the contract signing, he'd find a way. Make one call. Say one word, Phoenix. Then federal authorities would know. The embassy would activate. Help would come. Unless they were monitoring everything. Unless his phone was compromised. Unless escape was just another illusion they let him keep. Richard drank more wine, laughed at Papa June's jokes, danced with Maria, played his part perfectly. But inside, a small voice whispered the truth he didn't want to hear. What if this is who you are now? What if they've already won? He pushed the voice down, focused on tomorrow, on contracts and phone calls and coded words. Hope was all he had left. Hope and the terrible knowledge that sometimes, to escape hell, you have to become a demon. The party continued around him. Richard smiled, toasted his new family, and counted the hours until dawn. The immigration officer's stamp hung in the air like a hammer above an anvil. Richard's hand trembled as he handed over his passport. Behind him, 3 security guards watched every move. In the corner of the departure lounge, Maria sat with her lawyer, filing papers on a laptop. She hadn't looked at him once in the past hour. The officer studied his documents, then picked up a red phone. "Mr. Richard Collins? Please step aside. There's a hold on your exit clearance." Richard's blood turned to ice. Through the glass partition, he could see other passengers boarding the Chicago flight, his escape route home. The officer motioned to a small room marked secondary inspection. The same room where they took people who never made their flights. 6 months. That's how long he'd been trapped in this nightmare that started with a dating app and a woman's perfect smile. 6 months since he'd sold his house. 6 months since Maria had gone from lover to business partner to legal adversary. The secondary inspection room smelled like fear and disinfectant. 3 other men sat waiting, all foreigners, all with that same hollow look in their eyes. "What's the problem?" Richard asked the officer. The man shuffled papers, official documents with red stamps and Maria's signature. Multiple complaints filed. Emotional distress. Economic abuse. Threat to leave without supporting your wife. "She's not my wife. We never actually married." "Sir, according to these documents, you had a civil ceremony in Tagaytay 3 months ago." The officer showed him a marriage certificate. Richard's signature was at the bottom, forged, but close enough to cause doubt. Maria had thought of everything. The business they'd started together, the house he'd bought in her name, the joint bank account she'd emptied while he slept. All legal traps that turned his generosity into chains. His phone buzzed. Carol, his daughter, for the 10th time today. He'd been too ashamed to tell her the truth. How her college-educated father had fallen for such an obvious scam. How he'd ignored every warning sign because loneliness felt worse than risk. "Sir, you'll need to wait while we verify these claims," the officer said. "Could be hours. Could be days." Through the window, Richard watched his plane push back from the gate. Inside his carry-on was $3,000, all the money he had left in the world. His retirement account sat frozen by court order. His credit cards maxed from legal fees. And Maria held all the cards in a game where the rules kept changing. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Other passengers came and went from the inspection room. Finally, a new officer appeared, younger, with kinder eyes. He sat across from Richard and spoke quietly. "I've seen this before. Many times. Foreigner falls in love, gives everything, ends up trapped by legal technicalities." He glanced toward the door, making sure they were alone. "The complaints against you, they're serious but vague. No real evidence, just accusations. But in this system, accusations are enough to hold you. What are my options?" The officer pulled out a business card. "Good lawyer. Not cheap but honest. He's helped others in your situation. The other option." He paused, chose his words carefully. "Sometimes these matters resolve themselves with a financial settlement. Unofficial, of course." Richard understood. Pay Maria to drop the charges. Pay the system to look the other way. Pay for his freedom like everything else in this country had a price tag. He thought of the $3,000 in his bag. It might be enough. or it might disappear into promises and more delays. A commotion outside drew their attention. Maria had arrived with her whole family. Brothers, parents, cousins, and 3 men in barong shirts who looked like local politicians. She was crying, playing the victim for anyone who'd watch. The young officer sighed. She's good. Very good. You need to decide quickly. Richard's phone rang. This time he answered. Dad. Carol's voice cracked with worry. Where are you? Your flight landed 2 hours ago. There's a delay. Dad, stop. I know everything. Maria contacted me on Facebook. She wants money to let you leave. Dad, please just come home. We'll figure out the rest later. The admission broke something in Richard. His daughter knew. His failure was complete. But her voice held no judgment, only love and fear for his safety. He remembered teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, walking her down the aisle at her own wedding. Real memories, not the manufactured ones Maria had sold him. I'm going to try, he told Carol. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. Get on a plane. Any plane. Just get out. The young officer returned. Mr. Collins? There's been a development. Miss Santos is willing to sign a quitclaim, a document releasing all charges, for a settlement of 200,000 pesos. For $1,000 he didn't have. Richard laughed, actually laughed, at the absurdity of it all. The officer looked confused. I'll give her what I have, Richard said. $3,000. Cash. Right now. She signs. I leave. Everyone moves on. She won't accept. Then I stay. I fight every charge. I tell my story to every newspaper, every blog, every Facebook group for expats. I make this messy and public and embarrassing for everyone. The officer left to deliver the message. Richard watched through the glass as negotiations happened in rapid Tagalog. Maria's face went through anger, calculation, and finally resignation. The officer returned with documents. She accepts, but you sign additional papers. No contact, no social media posts, no discussing this situation publicly. Richard signed everything. His hand was steady now. Each signature felt like cutting a chain. Maria entered with a notary, her family hovering behind. Up close, he could see past her performance to the calculator behind her eyes. She'd played this game before, would play it again. He was just a score on her tally sheet. The money changed hands. Signatures were notarized. The hold on his exit was lifted. As Richard gathered his things, Maria spoke for the first time in hours. You could have been happy. I would have given you everything. Richard looked at her, really looked, and saw the tragedy of it all. She believed her own lies. In her mind, she was the hero of the story, lifting her family from poverty by any means necessary. He was just collateral damage in her survival strategy. You gave me a lesson, he said. Expensive, but valuable. He walked toward the departure gate without looking back. Behind him, Maria's family was already counting the money, planning how to spend it. The immigration officer stamped his passport with a loud thunk. Exit approved. No more red flags, just a tired man going home. The boarding agent scanned his ticket for the late flight to Hong Kong. Not Chicago, but away from here. He'd connect through Seoul, then San Francisco, then finally home. 36 hours of travel to think about every mistake, every warning sign ignored, every moment when his heart overruled his brain. But as the plane lifted off from Manila, Richard felt something unexpected. Not anger or bitterness, but relief. He'd survived. Lost money, yes. Lost pride, certainly. But not himself. Not his family. Not his future. His phone connected to the plane's Wi-Fi. Messages flooded in. Carol, track your flight. Mom's guest room is ready. His son David, Dad, we love you. That's all that matters. His sister, remember when you taught me to never give up? Your turn to follow that advice. Below, the lights of Manila sparkled like false promises. Richard closed his eyes and made a different kind of vow. He'd tell his story, not for revenge, but as a warning. He'd rebuild, slowly and carefully. He'd accept that loneliness was better than deception, that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. The flight attendant offered him a meal. He declined, pulled out his notebook instead. On the first page he wrote, Lessons from the Philippines. 1. If it seems too perfect, it is. 2. Love doesn't ask for your life savings. 3. Family protects. It doesn't pray. 4. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself again. The man next to him glanced at the words, nodded knowingly. First time in the Philippines? Last time, Richard said. Same thing happened to my brother. Took him 2 years to escape. They talked through the night flight, sharing stories of men who chased dreams into nightmares. By dawn, approaching Hong Kong, Richard had filled 20 pages with notes, observations, warnings for others. He'd lost a fortune but gained clarity. The price was steep, but the education was real. At the connection gate, he called Carol one more time. I'm coming home. Just home? Not home to start over, or home to hide. Richard smiled at his daughter's directness. Home to be your father, to be a grandfather, to be myself. That's all we ever wanted, Dad. As his final flight crossed the Pacific, Richard watched the sunrise paint clouds in colors that looked like hope. Somewhere below, other men were probably falling for the same sweet lies, sending money to perfect strangers who claimed to love them. He couldn't save them all, but maybe by sharing his story he could save a few. The pilot announced their descent into San Francisco. American soil, American laws, American reality. Richard had come full circle, poorer but wiser, broken but not defeated. He'd learned the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that save your life. The plane touched down with a gentle bump. Around him, passengers gathered their belongings, eager to start or finish journeys. Richard took his time. He had nowhere urgent to be except home, no one to impress except himself. As he walked through customs, the officer barely glanced at his passport. Welcome home, Mr. Collins. Home. The word had new meaning now. Not a house or a country, but a place where truth lived instead of fantasy, where love was given freely instead of sold dearly. Richard stepped through the automatic doors into the arrival hall. There stood Carol, his daughter, holding a simple sign, Dad. He walked toward her, each step lighter than the last. The Philippines, Maria, the lost money, all of it fading like a fever dream in morning light. What remained was what mattered. Family, truth, and the hard-won wisdom that some paradises are just beautiful prisons. And the key to escape is simply choosing to see clearly. Carol hugged him tight. You okay? Richard hugged her back, felt tears he'd held for months finally fall. I am now. I really am now. They walked out together into the California morning, where the air smelled like freedom and second chances. Behind them, the airport continued its eternal cycle of hellos and goodbyes, dreams and awakenings. And Richard Collins, age 62, finally awake, finally free, walked toward whatever came next with his daughter's hand in his and his eyes wide open.